Hi, Math One. This is your homework help video for Wednesday. Okay, so notice how this quadratic function, and I say it's a quadratic function because there is a variable squared term. The highest degree is a variable squared term. So if I was to graph this, it would graph a U shape going upward because A is a positive number. Okay, so this quadratic function has a leading term that's other than 1. A is not equal to 1 here. So you factor these a little different. The first thing that you're going to do is multiply the first and the last number, the coefficient and the constant together. The leading coefficient is 3 times a negative 5 is 15. So multiply this first number and this last number together, and that gives you a negative 15. Think about what numbers can be multiplied together to give you a negative 15. And when you add them, you get the middle number of a negative 2. Okay? So you can list the different factors, two numbers that can be multiplied to give you negative 15. So you have 3 and 5. Okay? In order to make it a negative, when you multiply, one of them's got to be a negative, but add up to a negative 2. So we're going to make the 5 a negative because 3 plus a negative 5 is equal to a negative 2. Okay? So now this is how you will do this. You're going to rewrite the first number and you're going to rewrite that last term. And in the middle, you're going to use these two numbers because they work. Positive 3, so we're going to put a positive 3p plus or minus 5p because those two numbers will give you the middle number. So basically, we're just breaking down that middle number. Okay? So now we are going to factor by grouping because there's not a GCF that we can take out of all four of these terms. So we're going to find the GCF of the first two and the GCF of the last two. What do the first two numbers have in common? They both have a factor of 3 and p in common. So we're going to take out a 3 and a p. What number can we multiply times 3p to give me 3p squared? P. What number can we multiply times 3p to give me 3p? 1. And we have factored the first two numbers. What's the greatest common factor of the second two terms? A negative 5. So take out a minus 5. What can you multiply times a negative 5 to give you a negative 5p? P. What can you multiply times a negative 5 to give you negative 5? A positive 1. Now the second two terms are factored. And what you notice is that these two terms right here are both being multiplied by the same group. So we're going to put those two terms in the same parentheses together. And then beside it, we're going to put the binomial that they're both being multiplied by. And this is going to be the answer. If I was to multiply these back out, I would get this as my answer. Okay? And try it and see. Let's do number 2. All right, again, this quadratic function, because there's an x squared term, n squared, this is a quadratic function. The highest degree is the x squared or the n squared term. Okay. This first number is not a 1. So when you factor this trinomial, you're going to multiply the first number and the last number together. That gives you a negative 18. Okay. You're going to think in your mind, what two numbers can be multiplied to give you a negative 18? And when you add them together, you get a middle number of a positive 3. So let's think about it. We have 3 times 6, okay? In order to get a negative, when you multiply, one of them has to be a negative. But when you add them together, it has to be a positive number of 3. So we're going to make we're going to make 3 negative. Why? Because when you add negative 3 plus 6, you get a positive 3. Okay? So again, you're going to rewrite the first number and you're going to rewrite the last number. And in the middle, you're going to use these two numbers because they work. You got minus 3n plus 6n, which in turns will give you this positive 3n when you combine them together. So now you're going to factor by grouping, okay? Because there's not a GCF for all four terms. So you're going to factor these two and then these two. Finding the GCF of the first two. The only GCF there is a positive n. When I take out an n times what will give me 2n squared? 2n. N times what will give me a negative 3n? Negative 3. The first two numbers are factored. Think of a GCF, or what is the GCF, greatest common factor of the second? You can remember, you can draw factor trees of them both, like we did in class. You could draw a factor tree of 6 and break that down to 2 times 3. You draw a factor tree of 9 and break that down to 3 times 3. So on out to the side, you have 6n. The prime factorization for 6n from least to greatest is 2 times 3, then times the n. The prime factorization for 9 is 3 times 3. The only factor they have in common is 3. So our GCF for these two numbers is going to be a positive 3. When we take out a positive 3, what number can we multiply times this positive 3 to give me a 6n? Well, 2n is left. So it's going to be 2n. What can we multiply times 3 to give me a negative 9? Well, oh, I forgot to put the negative here, Miss Reyes. Oh, guys, I'm sorry. This is supposed to take out a negative 1. So sorry. So what's left is a negative 3. Okay? This is going to be, oh, sorry. No. Too quick to finish the problem. What do they have in common? This term and this term are both being multiplied by the same group. So put these two numbers in a parentheses together, n plus 3, and beside it put 2n minus 3. Now, you can write this first and this second. It doesn't matter which one of these parentheses come first. All right, let's do one more. Okay, same thing. This is a quadratic function. A is not 1. Multiply the first number and the last number together, and that gives you a positive 12. Think of what number can be multiplied to give me the middle number. Multiply to give you 12, but when you add the two numbers together, you get the middle number of a negative 8. Okay? So let's think. We have 2 and 6, right? So 2 times 6. In order to get a negative, in order to get a positive, you could keep it as a positive. But if you do that, it's going to add up to be a positive 8. Okay? And that's not going to work. It has to work for both. So if we make both of them a negative, that's still going to make 12. That's still going to make a positive 12 when you multiply. And when we add them together, that's going to make it a negative 8. So we're going to use negative 2 and negative 6. So again, let's rewrite the first number and the last number. And in the middle, use these two numbers. We got negative 2n minus the 6n, which when we combine will give us this 8n. There's not a GCF for all four terms, so we factor by grouping. We're going to factor the first two. GCF for the first two numbers is going to be n. Take out an n. What can I multiply times n to give me 3n squared, and that's 3n? What can I multiply to give me a negative 2n, and that's minus 2? Okay? Find the GCF of these two numbers here. Negative 2. Okay? And 2 really, but the only reason why I'm going to take out a negative 2 is because remember, I'm trying to get both parentheses the same. If I take out a negative 2 here, that means the number that's in the parentheses is going to be a positive. If I take out a negative here, that means it's going to change it to a negative. So let's take out a negative 2. Okay? When I take out a negative 2, what can I multiply times negative 2 to give me a negative 6n? Positive 3n. You see? That's the same as this. That's why I took out the negative 2. What can I multiply times a negative 2 to give me a positive 4? another negative 2. And that's why I took out a negative 2 so that these two parentheses could be the same. So then now I can write these in a parentheses together, n minus 2, and then out beside it the number that they're both being multiplied by. So these two are going to be my factors. If I was to multiply this out, this would be my answer. So these two binomials are factors of this number. Okay? All right. See if you can do the rest of it on your own. If you have questions, feel free to ask more questions in class. All right, y'all. Have a good one.